Hello everybody, welcome back to another video where I talk over a video game, in this case Pal World. Once again, got a nice new set of armor, which I'm pretty sure you saw last week, but just thought I'd mention it at least once. Anyway, today I wanted to kind of revisit a topic that I'm pretty sure I've handled before. Well, I've kind of talked about it before, and that is that there is a difference in how people on the spectrum are treated depending on their gender at birth. And last time I think I just kind of went like, oh well, it's different for women because society wants women to act a certain way, and most people on the spectrum don't really act that way, etc. We're not really fitting that mold. I still agree with that, but I kind of wanted to dig a little deeper, and then more so along the lines of there's a difference between just moving around in public spaces and having to, say, work in an office or some type of environment where there is a group dynamic. And from personal experience, I can mask fairly well. So when I'm walking down the street, I usually have some type of like Mona Lisa smile or something, and I try to make eye contact and stuff like that. And I don't really tend to get bothered much on the streets because those are very brief interactions with people that I probably won't see again. Or if I'm walking around the neighborhood, I only really see them like when I'm walking the dog, and then there's probably also a dog involved, and that's a whole different interaction. It usually involves more smiling because we're smiling at the dogs and stuff like that. So I can technically handle that. The problem arises when I have to navigate a group setting, for instance, at an office, because, and here's where the gender part comes in. Yes, society expects women to behave a certain way, etc., etc. The thing is, though, women tend to determine who belongs in the tribe and who doesn't. And the way they do that is by seeing if you act the way they want you to act or not. Like if you can do all the things that are required of you by their standards. So if the group that you are socializing with or have to work with has a couple of women in it, and the woman who is the most dominant, because that's usually a thing, groups tend to have the most dominant male and the most dominant female. If the most dominant female doesn't like you and you're on the spectrum, or even if you're not on the spectrum and they just don't like you for whatever reason, it's going to be very hard, if not impossible, to connect to them. And also the other women that have kind of connected to the dominant female in this case, because they are under her rule, under her pecking order. If you really want to, or if you really have to interact with them, you're going to be at the bottom because there's no way you're going to rise above that. And as somebody on the spectrum, not only are you trying to figure out what people want from you in general, you're also trying to figure out why these women don't like you, and you also really won't be able to get back into that group. Because it seems as soon as they've decided that they don't like you, you're not really going to undo that. Not enough that you'll actually join them in some meaningful way. At least I've never seen that happen. And funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I was doing a case study for a training that I'm currently doing, like a home study type thing. And it was about organizing a training where people could like discuss things, how the group functions and stuff like that. The story was, this was a fictional story by the way, but in that story there was a person who worked at a department with secretaries, and they used a certain administration system. And this person, Diane, was great and everybody loved her. She was a social butterfly and she also knew everything about the system. But then eventually she quits to go do something else with her husband in another country, blah, blah, blah. So Diane leaves. And then the boss hires somebody else. Let's call her Samantha. Now, Samantha does not know anything about the system and she's a little shy. But the people on the department, the secretaries, expected that the boss would hire Diane 2.0. So they kind of treat her like Diane 2.0. They're expecting things that Diane would do in the way that Diane would do them from Samantha. And Samantha obviously is not Diane, and she doesn't know the system, and she's also new, it's busy, and nobody can really train her, nobody really wants to train her. They don't really invite her for all the social stuff, like they go together to places, and then they talk about it in front of her, but she wasn't invited, so she can't join in, and stuff like that. Like, that really happens, by the way. It was like a fictional case, but these things do happen quite a bit. Kind of reminds me of how when I left at my previous job, these women there had given me a gift certificate to go eat at this sushi place, and we were all going to go together a couple of months down the line. And then we went to the sushi place, And initially they're like, oh yeah, how's your new job, etc., etc. And then a couple of minutes into the sushi dinner, they were basically just talking to each other, and I was just there. So it kind of turned into more of a, we're going to go eat sushi, and oh yeah, she's going to be there as well. So guess we can tolerate her for like an hour and a half, like that. But you know, that type of thing happens in real life quite a bit. And then in that case study, we were supposed to organize some type of training to increase the cooperation among the people on the staff there. Now, according to the case description, Samantha had eventually been accepted and peace had returned to the department. I don't know how they did that, but apparently that's what they thought. And according to them, the correct solution to this was to have a session where they would reflect in general, objectively, on how things work in the department when a new person joins them during a busy period. So nobody was really like spoken to directly about what happened to Samantha and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that if this was a real case, Samantha will not have forgotten how she was treated in those first few months. And even if they were still cordial toward each other, she would never really be part of the group of secretaries that go and do fun things together. She may not want to be a part of that group anymore, but there's just a rift there. Now in this case, Samantha was just somebody who was kind of quiet, like reserved. And I guess we were supposed to assume that there was no neurodivergency at work here, so she is quote-unquote normal, and she was just a little quiet, so she was at least able to mimic all the behaviors that were expected of her, so I guess that's how she kind of got accepted. Now imagine if you were Samantha, you're a neurodivergent, you walk into a department which is 80 to 90% women, and they don't like you, and you're trying your best to mask and stuff like that. That is exhausting, and potentially you would not last in that environment for very long. You'd probably be looking for another job pretty quickly because you just know you're not going to be able to manage it over there. It's just not going to happen. Now, luckily for me, so far in my career, I have worked many positions with mostly male colleagues. They don't really care that much about that type of thing. And I also worked in the IT a lot. And there's quite a few people on the spectrum in the IT world, and that's just how it is, not just a stereotype. There are quite a few like neurotypical people in IT as well, but I've seen more neurodivergence in IT departments than not, so to speak. And I can't remember any one of them being outside of any group. There were other women there. It's not like we only had men in those departments. There were like maybe 20% women there. So for IT departments, not a bad score. But those women left the neurodivergent men alone. But I do recall getting looks from some of them because I am, of course, female, and so they were expecting me to do things that I wasn't able to do, and particularly back then, I was like a lot younger, and I was definitely not masking too much, and I had quite a time with people who were there and were women because I just didn't fit the bill. Now, people on the spectrum do tend to have a bit of an androgynous side to them. They don't particularly tend to identify with their gender too much, at least not from what I've seen. So we don't really tend to do much stereotypically gendered things as it is. We tend to have hobbies that are not quite one or the other if you were to look at things stereotypically. And if you then also are expected in public to behave a certain way, that can seem very strange and restrictive and definitely not natural to us at all. So that's already not helping. But if it also has a great effect on whether you're going to be accepted or not in a group, that makes things so much worse. And I'm pretty sure that also explains why they call it resting bitch face and not resting jerk face or something, because it's something that a lot of men tend to do, like look a certain way when they're just not thinking or they're just neutral. But if it's on a woman's face, it's so much worse, and that's where we get the RBF label from. But that is why I think it is different for the different genders to be neurodivergent, and that is not to say that I think it's easier for men with autism or something, because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of struggles that they have that female people on the spectrum do not. But from my female perspective, that's how I see things. And if you see things differently, if you want to share some stories, anything like that, just share a comment or just want to say hi, make sure to drop that in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. In any case, that's my ideas for now, or my thoughts for now. I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.